Good morning.
Good morning.
Pastor Buddy said, you can go long, right? So you may have to listen to me a little bit longer than you want to. Sorry. Not sorry. Sorry, not sorry. It's kind of like when I'm talking to my kids and they're like, Dad, we don't want to listen to you. I'm like, you don't really have a choice because I'm Dad. I'm going to tell you. Turn with me to John chapter 2. That's where we were before we took a little bunny trail last week. John chapter 2. So Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Go to the New Testament. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. That looks like a new Bible. Awesome. Can you find John in there? Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And it's New King James Version. Well, it wasn't Jesus because he carried around the King James Version. Oh, outstanding. Are you recording my jokes? Yeah, okay. That means I got to behave. John chapter 2, and we are in verse 13. Verse 13. So remember we talked about the miracle of Jesus turning water into wine at Cana. Okay? Shortly after this, it's Passover. That's where we're at. It's Passover. Now there are 3 feasts in the 7 feasts. Remember I said there's 7 feasts of the Lord. These are in Leviticus 23. Think of them as the 7 holidays. So when you go to work here in the United States, what are your big 6? Do you even know? Christmas, Thanksgiving, New Year's, and some others. Big 6, Easter, 4th of July, Labor Day, Memorial Day, right? Maybe. Big 7. But we know those because we know what? It's barbecue time. No work, barbecue time, right? I know when I was a kid, Labor Day and Memorial Day were most important because you didn't go to school until after one and before the other. No more. These kids don't even know. We had 3 solid months. June, July, August, and then you went back to school. Solid. We're talking till 9 o'clock at night, sunlight. I can't go to bed, it's still daylight. I remember I felt robbed when my parents made me go to bed and it was still sunlight outside.
I know, I hated that.
It's like the lights haven't come on, I don't have to come home. Some of y'all don't even know what I'm talking about, do you? The lights didn't come on, I don't have to come home. Anybody else drink out of that garden hose except for me? I would yell at my mom. She's looking at me from the kitchen right there. Mom, I'm thirsty.
Yeah.
Open the door. And what you do is if you're wealthy, you still had the brass fitting on the end of your hose. If you're like me, that thing had already come off and it's cut, and you have your brother drink the hot water first, and then you get the cool water. And if you're smart, you crimp it like this and turn it on. You go, you ready? Yeah. Yeah, it's boiling. Nobody had a little brother but me?
I had a bigger brother, and he was me.
I'll tell you this. This is kind of a bunny trail, I'll tell you this, but my brother and I, one time we decided to build an airplane on top of the barn. And I really didn't want to test it. So I let him test it. It's the brakes, kids. That's the biz. You get stitches. All right. Now the Passover of the Jews was at hand, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. And he found in the temple those who sold oxen and sheep and doves, and the money changers doing business. When he made a whip of cords, he drove them all out of the temple, with the sheep and the oxen, and poured out the changers' money, and overturned the tables. And he said to those who sold doves, take these things away. Do not make my Father's house a house of merchandise. Then his disciples remembered that it was written, zeal for your house has eaten me up. So the Jews answered and said to him, what sign do you show us since you do these things? Jesus answered and said to them, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I'll raise it up. Then the Jews said, it's taken 46 years to build this temple. Will you raise it up in 3 days? But he was speaking of the temple of his body. Therefore, when he had risen from the dead, his disciples remembered that he had said this to them, and they believed the scripture and the word which Jesus had said. Now remember what we said a couple weeks back. We said that everything Jesus does and everything Jesus says is going to do two things. It's going to fulfill prophecy, and remember, he is a rabbi. So it's going to point back to the text. Okay, remember, it's going to use remez. Everybody say remez. 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 It means hint or clue. So everything is going to point back to the text. When he says something or does something, those kids that are looking at him and those people that were educated, remember, they've memorized the Old Testament. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. They have memorized that. They know it better than you know it. They know it better than anybody in the United States knows it. Okay? And they've also memorized all the wisdom books. Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon, the wisdom books, and the history and the prophets, all the way to Malachi. That always unsettles me a little bit, because I can barely remember where I put the car keys. And I live in a house with my wife and you know, there's 5 daughters, okay? So somebody stole the remote. That's what happened. I didn't misplace it. It got stolen. And I can't remember where it is or who stole it. Passover. Let's talk about that for a second. There are 3 feasts. There are 7 feasts, but there's 3 that require everybody to go to Jerusalem. Passover is one of them. Passover, if you want to read about it, is in Exodus. And Passover is all of the things that the Jews had to do the night before they left Egypt. And every Passover since, they have to celebrate, and they come up to Jerusalem. And they go through all of these things. There's the sacrificial lamb. There's, you know, nowadays they have the Seder dinner. We watched a movie, I guess a month or so back, called Uncut Gems. And it kind of shows, first of all, it's a very stressful movie. If you haven't seen it, I'm not really going to recommend it to you. I thought it was one thing, and we got into it. Very good movie, but the entire time I sat there like this, just stressed out. The movie stressed me out. Uncut Gems has Adam Sandler in it, and it's not a comedy. It's not a comedy. It's very dramatic. But they're doing a Seder dinner there, and you can see them. They're eating the celery, and they're naming the 10 plagues. You know, flies, gnats, frogs. And the reason I want to go through that is because Passover is, who's it point to? Everything at Passover, when I strike the lintel with blood, who am I pointing to? Jesus on the cross, right? The sacrificial lamb. Who am I pointing to? Jesus, the sacrificial lamb. When we're eating the dinner with our everything in Passover points to Jesus. Who fulfills Passover? Jesus. On the cross, on the Passover, 3 years from that point. He will fulfill the Feast of Passover. So these feasts point to things that Jesus is going to fulfill, and Passover is one of them. Now think about it. If you're the guy that created everything, and you're the person that said, these feasts are my feasts, and this is how I want you to celebrate them, who's standing in Jerusalem right there looking at how Passover is being celebrated? Jesus. He's created it. This is the feast. It's the way it's supposed to be done. People are streaming into Jerusalem, and they're all coming in there. And that's what this is created for, is to come into his house. Now, I want you to understand that in the temple, we're American. So we look at things a little bit differently. So if I say to you the number 8, Conchita, if I say the number 8, you think 1 more than 7, 1 less than 9, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's 2 4s, hard 8 on a roll of dice, parcheesi, right? Eastern people don't think that way. 8 has a meaning. So when I say 8, it has a quality. And the quality of 8 is new beginnings. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, completed, 8, a new beginning. So that's how they think of that. So it's completely different. So the temple, everything in the temple, every device in the temple, everything in the temple, when you walk in, was designed to tell you a story and to point you to Jesus. Everything. From the brass laver, to the altar, to the table of showbread, all of these things point to Jesus. And here he is sitting, and it's Passover. And I want you to remember that Jesus he is Lord and Savior, but at this point, he is also a rabbi. Remember what I said about rabbis? He went to Beth Sefer, he went to Beth Midrash, he went to Beth Talmud, he probably even was a disciple of somebody else's for a little bit. He has disciples, he has authority, and he's done healing. He's a rabbi. And with that authority, remember that word shmiha? Everybody say shmiha. Shmiha, not sweetheart, shmiha. The shmiha is authority. And who gave him the authority, remember? Behold, the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world, John the Baptist. Father in heaven says, this is my son, whom I'm well pleased. Listen to him. 2, he has authority. And he says of himself, all authority is mine, given unto me. And that's where we find it. Now remember what we said, a young man who about age 13, he's memorized the Torah for himself. He can interpret the law for himself. He can read the law for himself. He can understand the law for himself. And now he gets to go to his first what? Passover. And he gets to kill the lamb. How old is Jesus here? 30. How many times do you think Jesus, in his family, laid his hand on a lamb at Passover and thought, I will do this one day? At least 15. Maybe. There were other people in the family. But he would have done it once. Think about that. Now, I don't know that. I can't prove that. But I can just look back at how things went in Galilee, and I can surmise that. Is that fair? And surmise it. Maybe, maybe not. So he's there at Passover. Now, first problem we've got is he's sitting there and he's looking at the temple. What's going on in the temple? Well, first of all, everybody's got to come up to the temple for Passover. They have to do an offering. You're not supposed to come up and present yourself without something. You're not to come before God without something. I'm going to kind of circle back around to that here in a few minutes. So they come in. And in the court of Gentiles, remember Passover is something where anybody can come in and celebrate. That's why the court of Gentiles is there. In this court of Gentiles, they're selling oxes and sheep. What for? For sacrifice. And why is Jesus so mad about it? Well, first of all, the coin of the time was what? A Roman denarius. But what does God say you have to come to the temple with? Shekels. Do you get to show up with Roman denariuses and put them in the temple treasury, or do you have to do shekels? Shekels. Aha. Well, does 1 denarius equal 1 shekel? So you don't understand about coins is at the time, currency was about weight. So if I were to reach in my pocket and pull out 3 Morgan silver dollars, does everybody know what a Morgan silver dollar is? 3 Morgan silver dollars. This used to be currency in the United States before 1912. Morgan silver dollars. At 95% silver. Okay, so if I pull out a Morgan silver dollar, what is its actual value in dollar bills today? $17. About $15 to $17. Because it's silver. And that silver, spot silver, just the weight of it is about 16 to 17 bucks. So that Morgan silver dollar has I can spend it for $1. But it's also worth 16 bucks. So if I've got a denarius and you got to come to the temple with shekels, I got a business. You know what that business is? Bring me your denarii, I'll give you shekels. But wait a minute, I'm in business. I'm in business, and I'm in business 3 times a year. 3 times a year at the temple. And I got to make my bag of cash 3 times. So here's the deal. 1 denarius equals a half shekel. So you give me 1 denarius, I give you a half shekel. You give me 2 denarius, I give you a shekel. Right? Does that sound fair? Too bad. It's Six Flags. We sell what we want. You ever been to Six Flags? I've been to Six Flags. That is the only place on the planet where you look at your wife and say, give me 30 bucks because I'm getting that bucket of soda. And for 5 bucks, they'll let me refill it anywhere in the park. There is nowhere else in reality where that is a good deal. Nowhere. But at Six Flags, you're like, it's a good deal. Have you ever been to those parks? I mean, and they tell you, you can't come through the gate. Carla may have to edit the Six Flags out of here so we don't get just trounced by Six Flags lawyers. But I've been there. This is what happens. So you go through the gate. They don't let you take any sodas in there. They don't let you take any waters in there. You don't get to take anything in there. And you get to walk up and you go, are you serious? That's a $25 burger?
My God.
You think I'm joking, but I'm not. And then you have a, bucket of soda that you can buy for 30 bucks. And you tell yourself, I'm not going to do that. Till you've walked about a quarter mile. And then you go, 2. Take plastic? What I learned about Six Flags personally, because I'm cheapskate, is you can ask them for water and they'll give you a little cup about that big, and I'll just stand there and go, fill it back up. Fill it back up. Fill it back up. It's not worth it. So he's watching these money changers. Now remember, the Jews at the time, the law says you can't charge another Jew interest, usury. So if you loan money to another Jew, you couldn't charge them interest. Have you ever tried to get cute? You know what I'm talking about, that phrase? Have you ever tried to play cute? Young boy goes to Sunday school, and the teacher's telling him about Jonah. He says Jonah goes over the boat, big fish comes up, swallows Jonah up. He's in the belly of the fish 3 days. Kid's excited about the story. He's like, that's awesome. Goes to school. They're in science class. He's talking to the science teacher. They're talking about whales. And he says, a whale, got that. Jonah was in the belly of a whale for 3 days. And the teacher says, no, whales have big mouths, very small throats. There's no way a human being would have slid down his throat into his stomach. The kid says, you're wrong. My teacher Sunday school says Jonah was in the fish. Bible says Jonah's in the fish. Jonah's in the fish. Teacher says, no, you're wrong. It's biologically impossible. They go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Teacher gets frustrated. Kids get frustrated. And the kid says, fine. When I get to heaven, I'll ask Jonah and we'll settle it. And the teacher says, how do you know he's going to be there? And he says, if he's not, you can ask him. That's getting cute, right? That's chutzpah. So have you ever played cute with God? You ever played cute with God? My brother, I had a room when I was growing up in the house. I lived out in what we would call a mud room. And it wasn't muddy, but it's where you come in with your boots and stuff, and you kick them off right there, and then right there was an extension to the house. It was basically a porch that had been kind of screened in with windows and stuff, and that's where I lived. And it had these two pillars. Now, I did not like my brother to be in my room. He's about 5 years younger than mine, and he knew rule is you can't be in my room. Okay? And my parents had told him, don't be in the room. So he knew that's the rule. So what he would do is he'd put his foot here, and grab this post, and he'd grab this post, and he'd lean into my room and go, I'm not in your room. I'm not in your room. And then he'd do it one more time, and I would go, you're right. Because that's the way I play. You weren't in my room. I didn't hit you. Playing cute, right? Fast and loose with the rules. But, by the letter of the law, he was not in my room unless we engineeringly go, you broke the plane. Which that's how I tried to defend myself with that. Didn't work. I still got in trouble. Have you played cute with God? That's what's going on here. They're playing cute. We're not charging interest. We're converting. To put it this way, you give me 2 chickens, you give me 2 of them Roman chickens, and that equals 1 Jewish chicken. What? They're chickens. No. Those are Roman chickens. They're bad. Bad chickens. 2 of those equals 1 good chicken. They're chickens. You're not getting this. Well, I want to talk to somebody else. Let me talk to the manager. There's 16 booths, and they're all charging the same thing. Now remember, you had to come up for Passover. You had to offer sacrifices. This was commanded. You don't have a choice. And if you came from a long way away, you can't bring the animals with you. So you take and you convert it into money, and you take your money, and when you get there, you buy something. And these people were taking advantage of that. Second thing is, there's actually selling goats and oxen and stuff like this because you have to have a sacrifice. So guess what? Once again, 6 Flags. You want to buy that goat? Well, yeah. How much does anybody know how much a goat costs now? I haven't been in 4-H in 20 years. How much is a goat? Let's say it's $20, $100. Let's say it's a $100 goat. About $40 for a goat. Cheap goats. $40 for a goat. All right? But I couldn't bring it 200 miles. So I show up and I walk in, court of the Gentiles, and there happens to be, a guy selling goats for the low, low price of $400.
Oh, my goodness.
You need a goat or turtle doves or whatever. But extremely marked now. We're not charging interest. This is the scene. And Jesus looks at this, and he gets upset. Now, I want you to understand that this is a different kind of anger. This is righteous anger. Because that's the only kind of anger that sits down and starts to weave a rope, a scourge. I want you to imagine this. You're a kid, you're still living in your mom and dad's house, okay? And you've done something, kind of played cute, okay? And you see your mama sit down on the back porch with 3 pieces of leather and start weaving a whip, looking at you. What do you think's going to happen? Yeah, that's what my grandmother would go, cut a switch. And I would cut like the big thing, and she'd go, oh, no, get a little one. So I would go find the littlest. She can't swing that. Those little switches will eat you up. Jesus sits down here, and he makes a switch out of leather cords. And he weaves it together. He takes his time, and he's looking at it, and he's weaving this together. And it says, the zeal of, remember, we point to the text. He says, so take these things away. Do not make my Father's house a house of merchandise. I see this a lot now today. I see where the church has become a business. It bothers me. Where you walk into churches and there's, let's buy CDs. There's a whole, where we play cute, right? It's not in the sanctuary. It's right outside the sanctuary. And you can buy CDs, and you can buy audio tapes, and you can buy books, and you can buy sermon lessons, and you can buy a hat, and you can buy T-shirts. Does that sound like merchandise? Do you know what merchandising is? That's a verb. Merchandising is when you display your goods or services in such a way as to cause them to appear attractive enough to purchase. Like when I walk into the Outdoorsman and they've got the .338 Lapua Magnum bolt-action rifle with a Night Force 56-inch, and it's right there, and I look at it and I go, I need that. I need that right now. You don't even know. You don't even know. And that's what they're doing. The entire court, booths. Not around the outside, up and down, inside, all these booths, goats, cows, coin changers, all this transaction occurring and people making their wealth and their living. And Jesus sees all of it and it eats him up. And he goes in there with a whip. Now, what you think about that? One guy goes in, I forget, it's St. Angelo. Are we at the West Texas Fair and Rodeo time?
Close.
Close?
Yeah.
One guy goes into the West Texas Fair and Rodeo and drives out all the carnies, all the carnival people. I can say that. My family has a lot of carnies in them. Drives out all the carnies and whips them out and then turns over all the cars and the Ferris wheels. That's somebody that's eaten up. Why? Why? My house is a house of prayer. That's what everybody starts to kind of miss after a while. Oh, it's a place where I can get a CD, I can get an audio tape, I can get a healing, everything in the temple points to Jesus. Everything in the temple points to Jesus. Everything in the temple points to the worship of the one who deserves it. Everything in the temple points to the sacrifice, the atonement, the propitiation, the justification, the sanctification that was won at the cross. Everything. And it's worthy of that. And it should be a place that is holy. And it should be a place that is respected. And it should be a place where prayer happens. Where the petitions and supplications are put forth before God. And Jesus is mad. And he turns them all out. And you know what the Jews say? They're not mad at him because he knocked everybody out and he went through there and he's whipping. They're mad. They say, by what authority do you do this? Who gave you the authority to make this decision? Because remember, for a Jewish person, if Jesus is a rabbi and he has authority, he has the delegated authority of God, then he can say, you've heard it said, but I say unto you, and that's the same as if God said it. And if he does, they've got to obey it. So he just walks into the temple and with authority knocks everybody out, destroys 20 or 30 or 50 businesses, blows them up, and he says, this is a house of prayer. And they go, by what authority do you do this? Who gave you the authority? Because if he has authority, if he has shmiha, they got to pay attention, don't they? But he says, my house is a house of prayer. How important is prayer to Jesus? Significantly. It's everything. And he says, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I'll raise it up. He's not talking about that temple that will be destroyed. There was the first temple, which is Solomon's temple. This is the second temple, or called the second temple, which Herod expanded and made much larger and was completely destroyed. So not one stone will be left standing upon another. And there's another temple coming, and that one's called the third temple. Will be built probably pretty quickly, unless the coronavirus knocks everybody out. Jesus is speaking here of his crucifixion, and every word that he says, they remember. Remember, this is written maybe 80, 90 years after Jesus has been crucified, died, buried, and resurrected. House of prayer. You're not supposed to show up without something for God. See, the people were being obedient. They're showing up, and they know we need to enter God's house. We need to have something. Maybe it's a shekel. Maybe it's 2 shekels. Maybe it's 2 turtle doves. There's specific commandments to the Jews, but you know what? Show up with something. You think to yourself, well, I don't have anything. I don't have anything to show up with. I'm here to actually get something. Okay. Turn to the book of Hosea. Chapter 14. It's the last chapter of Hosea. For those of you that have nothing. Chapter 14. O Israel, return to the Lord your God, for you have stumbled because of your iniquity. Take words with you and return to the Lord. Say to him, take away all iniquity, receive us graciously, for we will offer the sacrifices of our lips. What are the sacrifices that God requires? A contrite heart, broken heart. This is during the Babylonian captivity, so they couldn't offer in the temple. They couldn't go to the temple. And so what they're told to do is bring the sacrifices of their lips. The calves of their lips. And what is that? It is praise, it is thanksgiving, and it is prayer petitions and prayer supplications. Now, if you haven't heard anything else I've said, and it's too warm in here, and you're sleepy, and you're tired, please hear this. Please hear this. Because this is important. You need to start praying. You need to start praying. And also it says here, return. Return to the Lord your God. You need to return to God. You got a lot of things that are happening out in the world right now. You've got a virus that is sweeping through a continent, and it's killing people left and right. You've got war, rumors of wars. You have plagues. You have everything that's coming. And let me tell you right now, return to your Lord. And if you have not, if he's not your Lord, if you're here today and Jesus is not your Lord and Savior, I would encourage you to not walk out of these doors unless he is. You do not know what comes upon you. Please, pay attention to what I've said.